Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you're like me, you struggle with mental health, you've struggled with mental health, and you're also looking for a coach. This episode is going to be for you. Coaches love being coached, and this coach right here, Coach McKenzie, is one of the best coaches that I've ever seen. I follow him. I listen to everything that he talks about. So if you stay till the end, we're going to give you three things that you can start doing today to improve your mental health. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Richard. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
It's truly my honor. I want to give a big shout out to Michaela. If it wasn't for Michaela, we wouldn't be sitting and talking today. And also, thank you for Celsius Energy for keeping my energy up. I'm also down 22 pounds by using Celsius Energy. So, guys, if you love energy drinks and you might want to lose a little bit of that weight, Celsius is the way to go. So, Coach, let me ask you first question. What is your definition of resiliency?
Mm. Resiliency, to me, is a dedication towards your direction and towards your purpose. Can you be able to field the challenges and issues in front of you because you have a North Star that you want to point to, and that no matter what happens, you're able to still point to it. You're able to still center yourself in that direction. Um, with resiliency, you can't talk about resiliency without talking about purpose. You can't talk about resiliency without talking about, the contributions you want to make in the world. And so when I talk about resilience, I really talk about direction and purpose, because there's a lot of junk that comes into your life, and it's so easy to get sidetracked by that junk, and it takes you off and derails you from where you want to go. And with a clear set vision for how you want to contribute to the world, a lot of that garbage actually gets put into its proper place, and it doesn't get the attention that it so desperately wants. And so that's something about resilience that really matters to me. Is someone who is resilient is someone who can navigate through their direction and be very hyper focused on their purpose.
Now, obviously, I've read everything you've done. I've been following you. Yesterday was nothing but McKenzie Day. Uh, so if any of your social media has been blowing up, it's because of me. I take credit, 100% credit for that. You've grown up. You've had a lot of setbacks. I mean, you've had to be resilient growing up in foster care, being homeless. So give us a quick background about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you get into this crazy world of men's coaching?
Yeah, so I actually have a unique perspective in the foster care system. I'm not a foster care kid myself. My family housed foster kids,
Okay.
and and on top of that, my mother ran a childcare in our home. So I would wake up to 13, 14 kids in our house at one time, and it wasn't a big house. It was pretty modest. And so, I really had to navigate around people at a very, very early age. We had several foster kids and eventually adopted siblings who had a lot of mental health challenges, and so there was a lot of meeting with professionals, meeting with psychologists, meeting with counselors, meeting with therapists on how to navigate those people. And so I always like to say that I started getting my training at 5 years old or 6 years old or whatever, right when we started to have um, foster kids in our home. And as a result, as I've gone into life and started picking up some habits myself that I wanted to work through and move through, um, I really realized that there was a lot of men my age who were just like me, and who were going through something similar to me. And I had a unique perspective navigating some of the worst that mental health challenges can throw at you, or mental health conditions can throw at you, with being a family who navigates the foster care system. And so I began to obsess over this challenge of uh, the challenges that men are experiencing today, and there's a lot of consistencies in them, and we can dive into the specifics of those later. But when it comes to my journey, I felt like I had a unique perspective and a unique ability to kind of see past some of the things that people were going through and actually get to the root of what the challenge or the issue is. And as a result, I've been able to grow my practice and be able to grow a fantastic company that specializes in giving men that support.
And the scary thing is, and with veterans, we're losing up to 50 a day.
Yeah.
That's veterans and first responders together. But in America, we're losing up to 100 or 150 men every day to suicide. And I know it doesn't get talked a lot about, but this show we talk a lot about mental health because I struggle with PTSD due to traumatic brain injury. Um, you know, but men, we're supposed a lot of men, and I wrote it down. That's why I wanted to bring it up so I didn't forget. We're losing a lot of men because of the man up mentality. We're taught, especially in the military, suck it up, buttercup. Just man up. You're going to be all right. Suffer in silence. And I put a post out yesterday or this morning is that we don't need to be in silence anymore. We need to call our buddies, call our battle buddies, check on them. Make hey brother, how you doing? Don't want anything, just checking up on you because I believe that the lone wolf doesn't eat, and the lone wolf eventually dies. So, talk to us about the man up mentality I think it's still prevalent in this world that we live in today.
It is. And one of my favorite quotes that I read in a study one time when analyzing this issue was women are oppressed by their gender roles and men are constrained by theirs. And oftentimes we highlight one and devalue the other, right? And we really focus. There's been a lot of attention brought to liberating women into the workforce and giving women life beyond just being a mother. And it's brought so many benefits to the culture of the United States and the world. And it's brought our economy to a level that's never been seen before. But on the other hand, we haven't addressed the clear, evident problem that presents in men, which is, okay, if we don't have a clear path to purpose and success, because it's now hyper competitive with an entirely new gender on the workforce, where do we fit in the fold? And I think it correlates a lot with the depression or the divorce rates amongst women and men. And there's a lot of women who are increasingly feeling like they can navigate without a man because they can.
Yeah.
And as a result, men have to sit there and go, well, what's my purpose? If I'm not creating a family, if I'm not getting a job that can be able to provide for my family, then what am I able to do in my life? How am I able to contribute? And it's a problem that's blameless. And I often say that a lot to men. We can sit there and blame women like Red Pill does, or like some of these other social groups that have started to rise in the male mental health space. But I ask them, can we solve the problem without blaming someone? Because if we blame someone, we're trying to take control of a narrative that we don't get the luxury to control. But if we remove the blame and start focusing on, okay, how can we give men purpose? How can we give men direction in their lives to which they feel as though they can contribute to society? And that doesn't have to be so narrow as to being able to financially provide for a family and being able to get married. Then we're on the right track. Then we're able to start finding new purpose and we're able to start finding things. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge proponent on being able to embrace a lot of what traditional masculinity or manhood has. I think there is a place in our culture for it and something that is very important in our culture. But
You
when
know,
we talk about some of the more toxic and challenging traits of it, it really comes to me, in the root cause of it to me is a lack of finding new purpose beyond some of the more traditional aspects. So when we talk about the depression rate amongst men and we talk about the suicide rate amongst men, I see them often, when I read a lot of suicide notes from former clients of mine, and from the research that I've seen done with organizations like the American Institute of Boys and Men. There's a lot of men who say that their life is worthless, and that's a problem. And to me, it's a problem of not being able to articulate and guide men to a purpose driven life that is focused on giving them worth and value.
and I love that, and I wrote the word purpose down because you said it 5 times so far. Um, Unfortunately, I'm able to hear a lot better than I can see nowadays. But I believe that, because especially with veterans, once we get out of the military, a lot of us are banged up. A lot of us have struggle with mental health issues, and a lot of us feel less than. We feel like, okay, well, we're not the same man that left for war. We're not the same man that comes home. And I believe, and I talk about this all the time, that if a man or a woman, because it goes, heroes are men and women, but we're talking about men today, that if a man has a purpose, he's less likely to drink himself to death or pull the trigger
Yeah.
if he has a purpose in life. And that's what this whole podcast is about helping veterans find purpose again. So talk to us about, how can especially veterans and first responders find purpose again once they hang up that gun belt or that uniform for the last time.
When I work with veterans, I find that they found their purpose in protection. Right? I'm protecting our country. I'm protecting the men and women in my country. And there's a lot of pride around that protection. When you come home from those battlefields, from those war zones, the need to protect people goes away, right? There's not a lot of opportunities for you to find that ability to tangibly protect people. And so when I specifically work with veterans in coaching and in group support groups, I find that the mission is to not get rid of that instinct and wanting to protect, it's to repurpose it. And we repurpose it by understanding we can protect someone from themselves. We can protect someone from their mind, because a mind just chatters and it doesn't stop. It just attacks us at every chance it gets, because its job is to keep us alive and survive and not to thrive. And so when it starts obsessing over something that's going wrong, it will spiral and spiral and spiral. There's an opportunity to protect someone in that. There's an opportunity to protect kids uh, from from feeling lost and feeling like they lack purpose, right? And so we can take that ability to protect, that's the thing that veterans do so well, and we can purpose it towards helping protect other people from getting themselves trapped in their mind. How does that sit with you? What do you think about that?
I've never heard it put that way, but it makes a lot of sense because a lot of us, we struggle with not having that purpose again. Like when we're in the military, we knew, okay, got to wake up at 05. We got to be doing PT by 07. I got to be in formation at 08. You know what you're doing every single day. And then when you get out, there is no purpose. And a lot of us, if we're gone just for a year or a year and a half, a lot of us, when we come home, our wives and our kids don't really know us because we're not the same person that left the front door. So a lot of us are coming home as strangers, So I really like the way the way you said that sometimes we have to learn to protect ourselves, but we have to learn to protect our brothers and our sisters in arms. And that makes a lot of sense for me. I never thought about it that way, so I want to say thank you for bringing that subject up.
Absolutely. And when you're in the military, you're not an owner, right? You are the best of the best when it comes to following and taking orders, right? You are obedient, you are loyal, you are determined and discerned in that purpose through that mechanism. When you're at home afterwards, you have to move to becoming an owner of your family and an owner of your life. And that means burdening difficult things that are coming your way. That means making difficult decisions for your family that maybe they don't always understand or agree with. And that's a challenge for veterans because they're so used to being so good at taking orders and following orders and achieving those. But when you're in a family environment, you discern where your family goes and the direction your family has. And so to get into that ideation stage as a veteran is really challenging. And to get into that exploration stage or state of mind as a veteran can be really challenging. And it's just because it's a totally different way of going through life and finding your contribution to the world. Um, and so when I speak with veterans and when I work with veterans, I oftentimes um, we talk a lot about what it means to start owning our life and um, not being not being, for lack of a better word, controlled by orders or controlled by a schedule like what you guys have in the military, but being controlled by your ability um, to start making decisions and making adjustments and repurposing yourself within your family in a way that is completely different than how you've been raised to find success in the world before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and one thing a lot of people don't realize that if even a husband or a wife, if they go away for 18 months, their partner has to take up two parts. So now all of a sudden, man goes away. His wife is paying all the bills. His wife is taking care of all the household, taking care of the kids, getting oil changed, doing all this. So when the man gets back, he has to try to work his way back into being a father and a husband. And a lot of us never got back into it. We just couldn't find a way to. I think like something I heard you mention was the no more Mr. Nice Guy, because sometimes you get stuck in that. What was her name? Melody Beatty. You get stuck in that codependence,
Mm-hmm.
and you never take up your power again. And I see that a lot of gentlemen, they come back and they really don't go back to being. No, I hate to say being head of the household, but I'm a Christian man, and I believe that the man is supposed to be the head of the house, taking care of his bride, taking care of his children. But I think a lot of us, when we're gone for 18 months and you come back, now we have to weave our way back into what we were before, and a lot of us come back half of the man that we were before. So how does that work out?
Mm, mm. We have to look at what it means to be masculine in a home nowadays. Being masculine in a home nowadays isn't always financially providing. Being masculine in a home nowadays isn't always being the one who makes decisions. I find that being masculine in the home nowadays means you're able to provide a space for your family to tap into your wisdom, to tap into your knowledge, to to be able to share the things that they're dealing with. I think it's one of the most masculine things we can do is hold space for somebody else as a man, to give someone the space to share, to give someone the space to be open and and to get deep with you. A lot of men, especially a lot of nice guys, struggle with their ability to hold space for somebody else because they're so worried about the external perception of themselves. And so as a result, when they're in a conversation with their wife, when they're in a conversation with their kids, they're working on protecting themselves. They're working on keeping things back from coming out. When no, we want those things out. We want those things open so that we can eventually step into our masculine again and hold space for people to feel safe around us. Does that make sense? We're not getting rid of masculinity. We're not getting rid of being the masculine. We're actually finding the purpose that makes it sustainable in a household with a family, specifically with a family with dual incomes and a family in which you have a wife who is a go-getter. And a lot of military wives are go-getters, right? They have to hold down the fort while you're gone. That takes a special breed and of women. And we have to acknowledge that and be okay with that and let that come out if that's something that your wife really cares about and really wants to continue. And so, how can we hold space for that? How can we help facilitate that rather than trying to give the perception that we are a traditionally masculine man? And because more and more, I mean, 40% of women now make more than men. The idea that we can be the sole financial provider of our family is becoming increasingly out of reach. We can fight against that, and as a result, we can see, men struggle with finding relationships, which is what we're finding now. We can find that men will end up vilifying women, which is what we're finding now. We can find that men end up thinking that they want to go into red pill or MGTOW as a result of these things, these social movements that are vilifying women in this result. Or we can say, wow, I can use the strengths of being a man to find a new way forward with my family, and that way forward is holding space for them.
Yeah,
How does
and
that sit with you?
my wife makes double what I make, but because she's in corporate, I chose to go the military route. So, when you do 20 years in the military, you're not exactly crushing it, but I am now. But I'm my wife's biggest fan. I'm like, I'm pushing her. I'm always saying, hey, if you want to do something, let's go for it. Let's do it. I don't want to hold you back. I want to push you forward. And I think that either you make your spouse your biggest partner instead of it making her your biggest opponent.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to start my podcast, she's like, all right, let's do this. Let's go. Let's roll with it. Because she's also my biggest fan, and I'm her biggest fan. And I think a lot of guys get it twisted that they think, well, just because their wife is not succeeding, is succeeding, that he's not succeeding. Where I think if you're in a team, like we're Team Kaufman, that a rising ship, rises everybody. And I think if men look at it as, I think the way to look at if a man is doing a good job at home is look at his wife's face.
Yeah.
If she's happy, the whole house is happy. Happy spouse, happy house. But I think you also have to be your partner's biggest fan. And I think if we can do that, I think it would make a lot of marriages a lot better because we're not competing with each other. We're competing for each other.
Right. And when she comes home from work, it is masculine to hold space for her to share and to comfort her and to protect her from herself, from that mind that will chatter, right? I'm sure that since she's in the corporate space, she has bad days at work, right?
Yeah.
We always do. And is her husband sitting there comparing his career and what he's doing to hers? Or is he sitting there holding space for her and helping her navigate through that difficult situation? That's why I think what I listen for in men, are they asking questions to their wife? Are they being curious with their wife? Or are they just trying to immediately help? Are they just trying to immediately kick in and give them the solution and give them the answer? Or are you sitting there trying to have her work towards it herself and you're providing the space and you're guiding her through that? Every man has the ability to be a coach. They just have to lead with curiosity with their partner and with their friends in order to help their friends and their partner through any difficult situation. Whenever I talk to my wife or whenever I talk to a friend, before I give advice, I ask for it. Can I give advice? Can I give you some guidance? Can I offer that to you? Because I don't want to assume that they're looking for me to give them the answer. Because they may want me to do the most masculine thing I can do, which is hold space. So um, that's my evaluation when I look at, is somebody struggling to find that pathway forward with their wife? Are they leading with curiosity, or are they leading with trying to give advice and trying to dictate what their partner should be doing?
And like even before we got on, I told my wife I got a great interview. I love you. I admire you. You're going to kick ass. So have an amazing day, because she's in Texas right now. And when she read that, I'm sure she might have wait a minute, he admires me, and I think that sometimes that women need to show that they're appreciated and loved and admired as much as men love to hear that we're admired. You know what I mean? But I think sometimes we get caught up in that macho bullshit. We're like, oh, how can I say I admire my wife? She's a woman and I'm a man. You know what I mean?
External perception is incredibly important for men, because when you go back and look at boyhood and you go back and look at your dynamics in high school, dynamics in college, your friends dictated respect for you. Your guy friends dictated respect for you based off optics, based off that external view of you, right? Are you going to be wealthy? Are you going to be rich? Are you going to be able to be self-made? Or um, are you able to be funny? Are you able to kind of be one of the guys? Are you able to be in that close-knit group and take a joke and give it and dish it just as you receive it? And so what we don't do is prioritize what we actually want. From a young age as a boy, again, because we're constrained, we want to abide by the traditional milestones that most men want to achieve. And so our whole life is about building the perception that we are reaching that we're achieving that. By prioritizing perception in our lives, what we end up doing is hijacking our ability to connect with our partners. Like you said, the fact that my wife will think that I admire her is probably such a foreign concept to somebody who's navigated past relationships with other men, because men aren't sitting there wanting to give the perception that they look up to other people. They want to give the perception that they're self-made and that they can do this themselves and that they can handle this themselves. And it keeps us from being able to connect that way. Often the question I ask a lot of men when they say that they struggle to make friends and they struggle to keep relationships is I say, well, let's look at the version you're presenting to yourself. Let's look at the version you're presenting to other people. Is it a version that's open and willing to share their problems? Is it a version that shows their humanity and their imperfections? Or is it a version that's trying to explain something to people? Is it a version that's trying to give a perception that they are immune to pain and immune to problems? We present ourselves in a way that prevents us from connecting. And um, and so by you doing that, by you acknowledging that you admire aspects of your wife, you're showing your humanity. You're showing the fact that you don't have it all and that there's aspects of your wife that you look up to so much because she has things that you don't have. She has strengths that you may not fully have worked out yourself. And that's a beautiful, magical thing.
Well, I believe, because I used to be the biggest a-hole in the world. I was so full of myself. But after I got hurt on duty and lost my vision, I realized that God will humble you real quick. And that's when I started to become more of a humble man. But I also realized that in order for me to have a friend, I have to be a friend. Like I can't expect people to be my friends if I can't be a friend to them. And I think, like you're talking about, is being vulnerable. Like with my wife, uh, about a year ago, I almost took my life. She knew I was about to. She took me in bed, wrapped her arms around me, held me for about 8 hours until the demons left. But if I wasn't vulnerable in that moment and let her know what was going on, I might not be here today. And I think a lot of men are afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid to, you know, lift up that shield because then they're like, oh, well, she might know what I'm really feeling. And I think if more men were more vulnerable with their spouses, a lot of them would probably still be here today.
Men crave permission. And when we feel like we don't have permission, we close up, we hide, we conceal. Because what we've been taught in our boyhood is that if we don't have permission to say something or do something or be something, we get mutilated. Other boys will come after us. Adults will come after us because we're supposed to solve problems. We're not supposed to have problems. And so when I say, what is the version you're presenting to other people? Oftentimes it's someone who's immune to pain and immune to problems because we don't think we have permission to share them. And so that's been a lot of my work in these support groups that I've started, is giving men the specific permission to be able to bring those problems to a group where a lot of those other men have that same permission to do the same. Men crave that permission, and the moment that we give it to them, they open up like a book. And so I've heard time and time again from men that they're bad at sharing their feelings. They're bad at sharing what's going on in their life. They're bad at talking about themselves. They're not. They're just out of practice because they felt like they've never had permission to do so.
I agree 100%. And I also think that our home should be a safe space. It should be a safe space for us. It should be a safe space for our spouse and our children to know. Okay, when those doors close, this is a safe space. We're not at war with each other. We're here as a family, as a unit. And I think a lot of kids that grown up, especially if they grew up in a foster care system or an abused household, a lot of us don't even know what a healthy household looks like, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The qualities of being a traditional father and being a traditional man haven't changed that much in the past century. And so the way we raise boys hasn't really changed in the past century. The world has changed a lot, but we haven't changed how we interpret how boys should be raised. And there's benefits to that, and there's dangers in that. The dangers are you can get a lot of the same of what you're getting right now. A lot of lost men, a lot of men committing suicide, a lot of men committing violence, a lot of men who feel lost. On the flip side, there are positive things that come out of that. You can get men who get an incredibly strong work ethic. You can get men who are incredibly resilient and independent and determined in their career and in their path. We can't negate the positive qualities of that, but we also have to acknowledge what's making the negative qualities come out. And to me, a lot of it starts in their boyhood. It starts with how they're being raised by their parents, and it starts with the friends that they surround themselves with. And so your job, in my belief, your job as a father is to hold that safe space for your kids to be able to feel like when they come home and the door is shut, that they can open up about anything. A lot of fathers don't do that. There was a study done several years ago that studied when parents picked up their daughters and their sons, and they wanted to study the difference between how parents pick up their boys versus how parents pick up their girls. And they found that when challenges arose with daughters and they got picked up from school by their parents would ask, oh, how'd you feel about that? How can I help? How can I navigate that with you? When boys got in the car and shared problems with their parents asked, what'd you do about it? What'd you do about it? So the standard and expectation for boys is different than girls from the get-go. And there's aspects of that need to evolve and need to change.
Well, one thing, I got two boys. They're men now. I still call them my boys. One's 23 and the other one's 20. I still hug and kiss them. When they come in the house, daddy gives them a hug and a kiss and tells them he loves them. And I got a 13-year-old daughter. Yesterday, her day, it was picture day, and I took pictures of her to send to her mother because mom's away on business. I said, honey, you're beautiful. Daddy wants you to know that you're beautiful and I love you. And I think that especially daughters need to hear from their fathers that they're beautiful, that they love them. And I think even boys need to hear, you're handsome. I love you. You're the best thing going. Because I think, especially with girls, like the way I'm with around my wife, I'm always hugging my wife. I'm always kissing my wife in front of the kids. I'm always telling them I love you. Your mother's beautiful. And I think once they see that, they learn how to treat their spouses or girlfriends or spouses or boyfriends, how to be expected to be treated if that's the way that they've grown up. What are your thoughts on that?
When I talk to fathers, going back to the permission piece of our conversation, I ask them a very tough question that's very tough for them to answer, and it's very humbling to navigate that, which is, what am I giving my kids permission to be? And more importantly, what am I not giving them permission to be? And that requires a lot of self-reflection on your part as a parent. Am I enabling certain behaviors? Or am I restricting certain things from happening? You often hear stories about people who actively go against and make decisions against their parents, right? Who actively make decisions in their life that parents would be upset and angry about, and that they feel like they need to conceal those things from their parents. I find that to be a potential sign that parents are giving kids very, very narrow avenues in which they can navigate their life, and not giving them permission to explore, not giving them permission to find other things that they may be interested in, right? How many boys have had hobbies squashed because parents felt like it wasn't lucrative enough, right? That's the kind of thing I'm thinking of in this. And so as a parent, you have to take a good hard look of what you're giving your permission to be and what you're giving permission not to be. And don't get me wrong, there are times in which it is okay to not give your kids permission to do certain things. And we can call those standards. But telling your kids that there's an interest that they have, like painting, or an interest that they have, like, film, or an interest that they have with something that may not be lucrative, like financial services, that we may be restricting them, and as a result, they may become rebellious as a result of those restrictions. So we have to find that balance of setting standards for ourselves and our family, while also making sure that we're not being too restrictive with what those standards are. How does that sit with you as a parent?
Makes a lot of sense. Like my daughter, she's an artist. She loves art. That's her thing. And I'm like, hey, let's go 100%. Let's go all in. Let's go feet first. If you want to, I'll be your first client if you ever want to become a tattoo artist. You know what I mean? I'm like, whatever you want to do, as long as you want to be the best at it, I'm 100%. But I think a lot of men, especially military men, we held ourselves to such a high standard to where, like, if I have to ask my kids to do something more than once, I start boiling, because I know in the military we're taught I asked you to do something once. I shouldn't ask you to do it a second time. So, a lot of times we hold our kids to a higher standards than we were. But I also think that as parents, a lot of parents try to live vicariously through our children, especially with sports. We try to like, oh, if the kid is no good at softball and doesn't like it, why even force the kid to play? If he wants to draw, take him to the art store. Let's get some easels. Let him start drawing. So I think that's what you're talking about, right? Is letting them become free in a way and enjoy what they're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. So what I recommend is there's a great book on boyhood specifically called Guyland, and it's a fantastic book that goes into the intricacies of raising boys in the modern day. And so it's a great book to read in terms of getting that kind of context.
I'll definitely have to check it out because I'm still learning. Even though my boys are 23 and 20, I'm still learning, and I still have a 13-year-old, and she's going on 30, but I'm still trying to navigate that. So let me this is a teaching podcast. So McKenzie, if somebody's out there listening and they're just getting out of their military and they're trying to find their way again, because now you're no longer that thing. You're no longer that sergeant, that captain, that lieutenant, that colonel. Now you have to reimagine and reinvent yourself. What are your top three things that they can do to start learning how to reinvent and reimagine themselves as a modern day man?
Yeah. The first thing is we need to solve any sort of loneliness. And we can solving loneliness is actually relatively a tangible thing to do. And I always recommend solving it by going to a men's support group. The company that I have, Groups for Men, offers support groups for men that cover a wide range of topics every single night, all week long, and it's a fantastic service, and I highly recommend guys checking it out if they're out of the military and they're going into the real world. Starting with support and leading with support is so important from other men. You're going to immediately feel like you have permission to share with other men and relate to other men on the topics that you're struggling with. That's number one. Number two is we need to focus on giving ourselves permission that we don't have it all figured out. And that the tools that are in our tool belt are not sufficient enough to handle the challenges that you may experience after the military. Men have a very, very narrow tool belt. There are not a lot of tools at their disposal for solving problems, especially problems that are on the mental health and emotional side of things. We only have tools to solve problems with tangible challenges out there, like not having a job or needing to work through a difficult project. We don't have the tools when it comes to navigating a wife who has complicated feelings about you returning. We don't have the tools on how to navigate kids who are struggling to associate again with their father. And so we need to understand that we need to start leading with curiosity. Right. So that's step number two. So first step is finding support from other men. And the second step is leading with curiosity in our lives. The third step is to start obsessing over finding purpose. And I think a lot of times when we talk about getting purpose, we get it wrong. Because when we talk about getting purpose, we talk about it in the tangible, right? I want to feed 1 million people a year, right? That's a goal. That's not a purpose, right? And so when we talk about a purpose, especially in my support groups and in my coaching, we really focus on values. What are the 5 values you want to give to the world? And that combination, that unique combination of terminal values are the values that are unique to you, and they're like your thumbprint with your purpose, right? No two people are alike. No two people have the same set of values that they want to contribute to the world. And so when we talk about finding purpose in my coaching, we actually talk about leaning towards those values. Oh, you're having an issue with your wife? Look at those 5 values that you really want to contribute to the world. Which one's going to guide you through that conversation? Right? Compassion? Great. How can we emphasize compassion in this conversation? Right? So those values can be your North Star, your leader to every challenge and issue you have in your life. So when we talk about this in a 3-step phase, we're talking about getting connected with other men so that we can get permission to share. We're talking about leading with curiosity so that we can navigate conversations and that we can navigate ourselves with a new lens that's not defiant or set in stone, but is ever evolving. And lastly is finding and obsessing over our purpose through identified values that we want to live by. And so those are the 3 steps that I work on with men in order to navigate these issues. And one other thing I'll say with that is there is a mechanism to doing this, right? And the mechanism is observing your patterns, right? If I'm someone who is struggling with alcohol, I can sit there and call myself an alcoholic, or which is a diagnosis, or I can look at the patterns that are leading up to it. And I can acknowledge and examine those patterns, right? We recognize the pattern, we analyze the pattern, and we find another pattern to replace that one with. I think the number one thing people get wrong when they're talking about mental health is they're always talking about avoiding things. We're not in the business of avoiding things in our support groups. We're in the business of replacing them with something we value more. And that's what I would encourage every guy to lead with is don't try to avoid the bad things. Let's look at them, rip them out, and replace them with something better.
I love that. And I'm in recovery 36 years, and I know what my triggers are. I know what to look for. I know what's going to set me off because I'm either heading for recovery or if I'm heading for a relapse. But I know exactly what my triggers are. So McKenzie, so how do we get in your ecosystem? How do we find you? How do we support your amazing mission?
Groupsformen.com. We have an amazing organization. We've built out a team of world-class men's coaches that specialize in navigating any of the issues that men are feeling right now. And the one thing that I hear from almost every single guy who joins our groups is, "Wow, I can't believe there's other men who are feeling and thinking the exact same way I am." And our coaches are especially trained to get those things out and get those things in the open in our safe online groups. They're accessible to everybody. We have a free week-long trial, so you can hop into those groups, test it out, listen in, see if it's something for you, and even potentially share in that week. And then from there, it's just $49 a month. Our mission is to make this accessible to everybody, and so we've worked really hard to keep that price down. And so you have access to world-class coaches and over 8 hours of support groups a week for that set fee a month. So that is the number one way I would recommend guys to hop in and kind of join the experience is by going to groupsformen.com and reading more about that. On top of that, we also have courses that we offer. One's on relationship mastery, and we have other ones coming to market very, very soon. And then we also offer individual coaching for those who need a more accelerated program. So our goal is to create a world-class resource for men to get support in the mental health space in a way that they've never gotten support before.
I love that. And for $49 a month, without having to leave the comfort of your home, you can't beat that with a bat. So guys, make sure you go to groupsformen.com. I think it's a game changer. McKenzie, I just want to say, brother, I'm truly humbled and grateful that we got a chance to hang out today. And like I said, I want to give a big shout out to Michaela. Without Michaela, we wouldn't be sitting here together. And I want to thank Celsius Energy for keeping me upright today. I want to thank you guys. So, brother, I want to say thank you, and I'm truly humbled and grateful for your friendship.
Yeah, it was great getting to know you and chatting with you. And I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing down the road, man.
I love it. And guys, as you know, the way I end every episode is I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and something that he talks about is every morning we wake up, we have a choice. We could be a victim or we can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer victims of your past. You're victors of your present and future. So thank you guys for showing up. Now we're going on our 12th year. Thank you guys for showing up every single week. I love you and I appreciate you. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great week. McKenzie, my friend, have an awesome week. Keep kicking ass.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.